Hello and welcome in to another episode of the Fantasy Football Forecast. I'm your host, Trevor Scott, joined by my co-host, Matt Zeraldi. Today, we're back on the mics together, so I'm very excited to get into another tier of running backs. We're going to break down three players here, Omarion Hampton, Alvin Kamara, and Kenneth Walker, and go over what we like, what we don't like about each player, and how we have them ranked. If you like the content in this video, hit the like button. If you're new here and want to see more of us, hit that subscribe button. And if you want to hear us do anything leading up to the season, drop a comment for us below. So the first player we're going to talk about here is Omarion Hampton. So he has been flying up boards recently. Obviously, the Najee news and the fact that Najee isn't practicing has been contributing to that. But I also think as camp has gone on, hype for him has been building and building. Greg Roman has talked about giving him a Derrick Henry style workload. He's been catching passes. There's been all kinds of clips of him catching passes. And with the first round draft capital, it's just hard not to get excited about a player like that. Currently in best ball, you'll see him go in the third round of drafts. Fantasy Pros has him all the way up at RB16. We obviously love Omarion Hampton as Charger fans here. I'm getting really excited to draft him and Trevion Henderson. I just can't get excited enough about. I feel like I just keep pushing him up and up and up. And currently I have him ranked RB14, but I feel like almost I need to push him up into that 10 or 11 range over Kyren Williams.
Yeah, and this really feels like a guy, I don't know if we're going to do like a bold prediction show, but he might be someone that I would say has a chance to finish above Ginty as the top rookie running back in the class. And this is a guy that just profiles as a complete and total workhorse, right? 6 foot, 220 pounds, 4.46 speed. And with the Chargers specifically, we know they've got great tackles on the outside with Slater and Joe Alt, but then they kind of got their ace in the hole with adding Mekhi Becton as a guard who's an excellent run blocker. And we know the Chargers want to run the ball a ton. They want to play good defense. They want to play old school football. And if you look at last season, the pass attempts per game went up quite a bit, but really that was after J.K. Dobbins went down. Like the first 11 weeks where Dobbins was playing, Herbert averaged only 27 pass attempts per game. Then Dobbins gets hurt. Then the remainder of the season, Herbert averaged 32 pass attempts per game. The most important thing you said was with Najee Harris. It's like every day that goes by, Hampton's getting the first team reps. And as of last week, Harbaugh suggested that there was no timeline for Harris's return. We finally see him on the field again in a little bit more of a capacity the other day where he's kind of just walking around doing laps with like a weighted vest. So that's not necessarily looking promising. And I think the reason in the beginning that, we were cautiously optimistic with Hampton is with Najee, like he doesn't miss games, he doesn't fumble, he gets those 3 to 4 yards and he was going to be annoying. But now it's like, I just don't foresee a way that they can keep this guy off the field. So I'm pushing him up more and more. If you're drafting soon, make sure you highlight this guy because if he does fall, he has the chance to really be a league winner.
Yeah, and something that you said that I really like too is that he could finish ahead of Ginty, and he's going to be in a really good offense. And if he's the focal point from week 1 of the season, I agree with that take. I really think that could happen because Ginty is going to be in an offense that's predicted to be better, but still probably bottom 5, maybe bottom 7 in the league. So, Ginty could be facing a lot of boxes. Obviously, he was great at that in college, but, we saw it with Saquon buried on the Giants behind a bad O-line and a bad offense. And, obviously he gets out and explodes. But, there's definitely the capability here for Hampton to assume just a workhorse role from the beginning and could outperform Ginty. So I think a lot of people are catching on to that. That's why he's starting to fly up boards in a way that he wasn't previously. Going over to the second running back we're going to talk about is Alvin Kamara. So I admittedly am a sucker for Alvin Kamara. I just always feel like he has such a great floor with all the receiving game work that he's going to get that he's basically bust proof, right? He's not necessarily going to blow the top off anymore. He's not necessarily going to win you a league and that type of stuff, right? Which is why maybe he's gotten a little bit boring, or why he's been starting to get ranked in the running back 17, 18 range, despite his last 2 years finishing 11th and 9th. And he finished 9th in 14 games too. So he did that without the last 3 games of the year. And he finished 5th on a per game basis. So again, though, it's like even finishing 5th at running back, like you're not getting the league winner, right? You're not getting the Jahmyr Gibbs. You're not getting the Saquon Barkley. And I feel like a lot of the running backs this year, like Chase Brown or Omarion Hampton, who we just talked about, they have these huge upsides. Josh Jacobs, 20 touchdown upside. Like that type of guy is just hard when you're comping them to Kamara because Kamara is not going to really rush for 1,000 yards. And his touchdowns on a terrible offense are probably going to be limited to, I'd be shocked if he topped the 8 he scored last year. So, that I think holds him back a little bit, but I just love the safety of, like, having your 5th or 6th round pick. Just, you know exactly what you're going to get, and it's going to hit in a way that some of the other players that go in that range maybe could flame out. Like, for example, I picked Sam Laporta in round 5 last year, and it was like, well, okay, I thought he was going to be great, but like, he ended up flaming out, not being a difference maker or even that good. And Kamara is somebody that, had I picked there, I would have been much happier with that pick. So, it's just safety. You know what you're getting. A lot of receiving game work, high floor, and so that's why I like Kamara. I do have Hampton ranked 1 spot ahead of him now, though. So I did move Hampton ahead of Kamara, but I still am partial to Kamara, and I do feel like I can get him a round or 2 later, even sometimes. So I feel like that's why I'm going to end up with more Kamara this year than Hampton.
Yeah, and just look at his career year over year finishes. And none of those seasons he rushed for over 1,000 yards. So we know what he is. We know the blueprint. And I think a couple things to point out where, one can say, okay, Derek Carr's gone and he was just a check down merchant because it was Carr. But it's like in the 2 games with Spencer Rattler last year, it was like 8 and 7 targets. So I just think we're going to continue to see more of the same. And then with Kellen Moore taking over this offense, it'll be interesting to see if he can kind of turn it around because, we like Olave, we like Shaheed. The quarterback position is a little bit in flux, but if Tyler Shuck is maybe better than we had hoped for or better than advertised, I think there's a real chance for a lot of these guys to outperform their ADP. And then in terms of like play speed and play style, Kellen Moore's offenses have all topped 65 plays per game. And that's a very up-tempo pace. I think that's going to be room for a lot more plays. Now, sure, he's been on a lot better teams throughout his career, so that definitely helps, but just kind of looking for some pieces here. And I do have Kamara 1 spot below Kenneth Walker and 2 spots below Hampton. But again, these are all guys that we have ranked back to back.
Yeah, and I like the Kellen Moore aspect of it too, right? Like, they did get a new system that has kind of been proven out to be fantasy friendly in the past. And so, if again, he's got to lean into what his quarterbacks can handle and what his personnel is going to do well. And I feel like easy throws to Kamara is just a recipe to get somebody settled in. So, there's a lot of the Derek Carr element to it of like, Derek Carr really favors throwing to the running backs, right? But when you look at some of these reception totals, right? Derek Carr missed weeks 6 to 8 last year, and it's 8, 7, and 11 targets for Kamara. So I do understand the worry about the quarterback and the worry about the offense, but I just think Kamara's role in it is so set, and he's like their only game in town. He just signed a 2-year extension last year, so he's in the first year of a new deal. I just really think that Kamara has a chance here to continue to provide you top 10 fantasy production at much, much lower price. All right. And the last guy we're going to talk about here is Kenneth Walker. So we're obviously both getting more and more hyped on Ken Walker. I still have a little bit in the back of my mind that Zach Charbonnet can carve out a role here. And so I think that's why I have not been able to just go all in on Walker yet. I love the talent. I do think he's got a lot of breakaway speed, and he can break long runs. I do think he struggles a little bit at just taking what's in front of him. But, I think when you're hunting for the big play constantly, that's kind of going to come in your profile. So maybe that has drawn some frustration. But I think the other big thing too is the injuries, right? He missed 2 games, and then he missed 6 games last year. And so having Charbonnet shine in those spots is kind of nice, I guess, if you can handcuff them. So you kind of always get that production. But it also worries me just a little bit to be investing too much in Ken Walker. So you see in his 11 games, he scored 8 touchdowns, and, he wasn't super efficient on the ground, but I have a hard time looking at efficiency numbers when they're not over the full season, because it just takes 2 games of him hitting a couple home runs there for that number to look way different. And so, and then also a huge role in the passing game. So if they're actually going to use him again, there's been some hype around his passing game work. They're actually going to use him again in the passing game like this. He had 46 receptions in 11 games. That is a huge workload. And looking how it broke down, it was a big portion of it over these 3 games where he had 4, 7, and 8. But, he was still definitely involved. He had another game late with 8 receptions. So I definitely think that the upside here, if he is the workhorse, if he stays healthy, and he is going to be heavily involved in the passing game, is a top 5 finish. I think that there's definitely in that range of outcomes for him because he is so talented.
And with Clint Kubiak taking over as the OC, his backfields have always targeted running backs at a very high rate. We saw it with the Saints. We've seen it with the Niners, with the Broncos. So I think everything that we're hearing from the beat writers and the coaches is that Walker is going to continue to be that workhorse. And I still think there is more runway for Zach Charbonnet in this offense because they're completely changing the scheme from the Ryan Grubb air raid to more run focused, right? And when you lose DK and Tyler Lockett, and yes, you bring in Cooper Kupp and you have JSN, but I just think that there's going to be more to go around. And I think you mentioned it with the handcuff. This is one of like maybe 2 players that I'm comfortable handcuffing just because we've seen Charbonnet's role and how productive he is when Walker does miss time. So again, the upside is sky high. Hopefully, the coaches can kind of hammer out that you don't always need to get the home run. Like it's okay to get 3 yards when it's not there. You don't have to go backwards and search for it. But again, a player that I love and I'm very invested in this season.
All right. So the way I have this ranked is Hampton at 14, Kamara at 15, and Walker at 16. So, back to back to back. And I really like this range of running back too. For me, if I'm in a 3 wide receiver Superflex league, the way I'm attacking this position is to try and get one of these guys for sure. And if I go receivers up top and I don't go in on a running back, and I go receiver, 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 or I go receiver, receiver, quarterback, receiver, that type of build up top, and one of these guys is available in round 5, or even if I, build out with another quarterback or tight end at that point and they come back around and one of them's there in round 6, especially of my 10-team Superflex leagues, I'm absolutely okay in those builds having one of these guys be my running back 1.
Yep, I love it.
All right, with that, thank you so much for listening. Drop a comment down below on what you guys think, and if you want to see anything else, we look forward to talking to you in the next one.